Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So I want to follow on this afternoon from this morning's keynote that talk about innovation and building a customer-centric culture by talking a little bit about the culture of innovation at Amazon. Okay. So I want to start off with this slide, which shows a little bit about the history of innovation at Amazon since when we were founded in 1994, going through to the foundation of Amazon.com, and then some of the specific things that we've added along the way with Amazon Web Services in 2006. I think what's interesting, and something that I hear when I speak to customers who ask me, Amazon is such a big company, how is it that you're able to innovate on a constant basis, and as this diagram shows? And so today I want to share about our culture of innovation and how we've organized ourselves so that we can innovate on a constant basis, and in the process of doing so, become better at doing it. The other thing as well is what this doesn't show is it doesn't show all the stuff we've done, and it doesn't show all the failures we've had along the way as well. So, and it doesn't show the mechanisms that we've put in place. Okay, so over the next 45 minutes, I'm going to share those with you. So it begins with our mission, which is to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. It's very simple. It's very easy to remember. But what does it actually mean, and how does this actually help us innovate? And the way I like to think about this is that when you look at the previous slide, we started off as Amazon.com, but then we went into Amazon Web Services, and we've done Alexa, and we've done Go. None of that is tied with the mission, okay? The mission is to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. It's not about being the best bookstore in the world. So what this allows us to do is it allows us to enable a very broad remit within the organization to innovate in every dimension. And our mission is rooted in our commitment, which is basically to make our customers' lives easy. Now, whether that's frustration-free packaging, if you're used to using the retail site, or even if you look at Amazon Web Services and how we've made spinning up services that customers can use much easier than they used to have to do it. So this is where our commitment is, to making life easier for our customers. And following on from that, what that means to us is we put the customer at the center of everything, and we work backwards from there. If you look at AWS, for example, 90% of our roadmap is driven by customers. The other thing that Gavin talked about this morning was how, when you put customers at the heart and the center of everything, customers are always fantastically dissatisfied, and so they're always willing to give you feedback as to how they want the service to be and how it can be better. So putting customers at the beginning of the journey allows you to get that data and then invent on their behalf. One of the things that we've seen through our journey is there are three things that our customers always care about. They care about value, selection, and the convenience. And so when we've built new products and services, what we found, irrespective of geography or industry, that these things hold true. And so when we look at innovation, we try and think of it in the context of a flywheel, a growth flywheel. And so if we take a look at Amazon Web Services, as was mentioned in the previous session, we have over 120 plus services. Looking at the flywheel and how this works, when we created the first couple of services back in 2006, it was a great customer experience. Yeah, people were able to spin up compute, they were able to use storage in a way they'd never done before. And so that drove a lot of interest. It drove traffic, it drove developers to create new things, it drove partners to build on top of AWS, and that then drew more people to use the platform. And as we got more traffic, and drew more partners, more products, we increased and produced more services, which increased the customer experience. And so we start generating motion, okay? And as that flywheel starts turning and the platform starts growing, then what happens is allows us to optimize, innovate, and lower prices. So since 2006, we've reduced prices 66 times. So this is one of the heart of our innovation is this flywheel. So I've talked a little bit about kind of our mission, but now I'm going to kind of focus and switch gears and talk about actually how we organize for innovation. And we have 4 pillars. So I'm going to go through those now in detail. And the first one is mechanisms. So mechanisms you can think of as a closed loop system. So some people call them processes, but we call them closed loop systems because you do something, you measure it, and then based on the data you collect, you then make a decision. You either carry on doing it, you change, or you stop. Okay? And this is really important for us. We have our most famous mechanism is called working backwards. And when you join Amazon, this is something that everyone is made aware of. We have internal training. And so everyone is, kind of trained on our kind of core mechanisms for innovation. And what working backwards does is starting from the customer, we then we create a number of deliverables that helps on the innovation journey. So we create a press release first, we then create an FAQ document, and then we also create some visuals. Core to this are 5 key questions that we ask in order to really understand who the customer is, what the opportunity is, what the clear benefit, customer benefit is going to be, how do you know what the customer want or need is going to be, and finally, what does that customer experience look like? Now, it might seem very simple, these 5 questions, but actually, when you go through the process of trying to understand who your customer is, it can actually be a lot harder. So I was doing this last week, actually, with some ideas that we had, and we started off with who we thought was the customer, and then going through the process and working it out, we actually realized that actually it wasn't the customer we thought. So when you start thinking about the customer, you have to look at things like the context. So here we've got different contexts, a person on a bus listening to music, maybe someone who's working in a warehouse, someone who's an admin. Yeah, so there are different, when you think about your idea and you think about who your customer is, you need to take into consideration all these factors. And I talked about these deliverables. The press release document is a 1-page press release. It's written in plain language. It doesn't contain jargon. And the words that are used are describing what the user or customer experience is going to be when they actually get this product. Now, what's interesting about this, okay, is if you're innovating, at this point, you're not talking about technology, and so you're not limiting yourself, okay, or constraining yourself to the limitations within your technology toolbox, okay? When we created the PR document for Alexa, the technologies available at the time didn't exist. Okay, but that didn't stop us having the idea and then creating the press release of what that experience would look like. The FAQ document builds upon the press release, and it answers questions that customers would typically have if they were going to use your product or service. So that might be questions such as, how much does it cost? Where is it available? How do I get support? Those kind of questions. We don't put it with the press release, but they're there so that you have a consistent view as to how you will answer those kind of questions when the customers ask them. And then we have some very simple visuals that help explain what this experience is going to look like. And you do this, and then that's the start of the journey. Now, we have PR documents that iterate, 20, 30, 40 times, yeah, sometimes over a period of months, maybe even years, okay? And so you go through this process of working with peers, working with interesting stakeholders to review your idea and to collect feedback. So I want to kind of finish this part with a quote from Jeff, who says that in our opinion, most people have got how you create products wrong. Okay, for us, it makes perfect sense to work from the customer and create something they want, whereas most customers actually create something, throw it over the wall, and expect someone to market, support, and run it. Okay, so for us, that is the backward process. So we have mechanisms and processes. What we now need is we need to have toolboxes, a toolbox that allows us to actually build on that. There's no point building these ideas to have to wait, 8-9 weeks for the technology stack and other supporting mechanisms to actually then work. You want to start straight away. So for us, how we achieve that is self-service platforms without gatekeepers. Okay, and this is a technology self-service capability, but it also extends to other areas as well. So, how you document using wikis or other self-service documents, how you engage with other teams, such as legal or HR through a ticketing system. So we have a number of these self-service systems, okay, that allow us to start really quickly and be very agile. And I've talked already about the AWS products and services. This forms really the core of the toolbox that our innovators use internally and allows them to use these as building blocks to build on top of. And I think one of the key things, last year we introduced 1,430 new capabilities and services. So that's stuff that our inventors, our internal innovators don't need to worry about. They're building on top of these. And as we increase our pace of innovation, we can focus on the new stuff rather than the undifferentiated stuff. The other aspect of our architecture, okay, is how we use microservices, okay, to enable agility and speed. So if we look at how Amazon used to look like, a monolithic block, and one of the frustrations that that we had was we wanted to release new features on the platform, but because the architecture of the platform, we had blockages, okay, and so we re-architected to microservices. So each piece of functionality within the platform had a service, and that allowed us to dramatically increase how quickly we could release new features and new products for our customers. Okay, and now that allowed us to get to a stage where now each of those teams are independent and how they release those changes. There's no longer that having to wait in line for a change to the monolithic block. So we've talked about the mechanisms and the tools and the architecture, but now we need to talk about the culture. And we need to consider, the people that are actually going to operate those mechanisms and use those tools, okay? And for us at Amazon, that means we hire builders, okay? We hire builders and we let them invent, okay? But we realize that builders come in all shapes and sizes, from all over different backgrounds. These are, the people that don't like saying no. They want to create the new art of the possible on behalf of their customers. And so how we manage to find these is through Amazon's leadership principles, okay? So we have 14 of these leadership principles, and from customer obsession at the top to deliver results at the bottom. Now, what's interesting about these leadership principles is when you look at them, okay, it might appear that some of them are contradictory. Okay, so how can you think big but be frugal? Okay, how can you insist on the higher standards but then have a bias for action? Okay, and the answer to that is actually it's not easy. Okay, and one of my colleagues who talks about this, Boris, he likes to think of it as imaginary hula hoop that you are trying to keep in balance around you. And when you work on a project and you're thinking big and you're doing it on a tight budget, and you do that over and over again, you start getting very good at doing it. So what these allow us to do is it allows us to build the right kind of behaviors that we want when we're innovating. So the other aspect of our culture is that we do give our people freedom to innovate through being comfortable with failure. So if we look at a shareholder letter from 2015, one of the things that Jeff said is that, we are a great place to fail, and that failure and experimentation are inseparable twins. Okay, so if you're not failing, then maybe you're not experimenting or thinking big enough. If you know the output of your experiment, by definition, it's not big enough. And so what this is allowing us to do is it's allowing us to support our people in that journey of failure. And kind of very closely matched with that is and following on from the slides from the keynote from Gavin this morning, we encourage our innovators to experiment frequently. The cost of doing tests on the cloud is really, really simple and cheap and fast. And therefore, using the lean principles of small batch sizes allows us to very quickly get the data we need to know to see whether something that we want to try is going to work or not. Now, another aspect, of this, and something that we do get asked a lot, is that we measure also the inputs and outputs of the kind of experiments that we do. And we do that in order to make sure that we encourage our people to kind of carry on innovating. And I'm going to go into more detail in a bit. But before I do that, I want to talk about one-way and two-way doors. So one-way and two-way doors can be thought of as activities you might do or decisions you want to make that are very hard, if not impossible, to come back from. That's a one-way door. Whereas a two-way door is you might spend some money, you might waste some time, but you can come back, okay? And it's our opinion that most of these decisions when it comes to innovating are actually two-way doors. And so we spend a lot of time with people to make sure and help them understand, is this really a one-way door or is it a two-way door, okay? And that's really, really important. When we look at a couple of lessons we learned from past failures. So on the left-hand side, we have Amazon Auction, that great service that was going to compete with eBay, but actually ultimately didn't succeed. However, the team went on to then create Marketplace, which is a very successful part of the Amazon.com platform. On the right-hand side, we have the Amazon Fire Phone. Anyone here had a Fire Phone? I can't see, so. We put a lot of effort and money into that, but it failed. However, the team went on to then work on Alexa. So how is it that you can make people who have participated in a project, it failed, then go on to succeed? And this is where the inputs and outputs. I actually used to work for a very big professional services company, and I used to work with innovation. And so this was really revolutionary to me. And that when you measure the work done, okay, what we do is we measure the inputs as well as the outputs. So the outputs typically are what most companies think about. So does it increase the share price? Did we make profit from this thing or product or service? However, we look at it also from a point of view of input. Did we create cool technology? Did the team work really, really well? Did we hire some cool people? Yeah. And when you balance the two together, that allows you to incentivize for those people that may have had a failure to carry on working on the next experiment. The next part of our culture is that we're quite happy to be misunderstood for long periods of time. So back in the time when AWS was launched, There was a lot of commentators saying that, Amazon should stick to the bookshop and not worry about this new cloud technology thing. But as was found out over the course of time, we created a completely new segment that's been very successful for us. So we feel very comfortable in that space of doing things and being able to be misunderstood for those periods of time. So we've covered the mechanisms, the tools, and the people. The last part of this is actually how we then organize that and how we operationalize the innovation. And for us, that's the mystical two-pizza team. Okay, have people here heard of two-pizza teams? No? Okay. So I hasten to add these are American-sized pizzas rather than European-sized pizzas, as I found out when I was over there. And so what a two-pizza team is when we've come up with a new idea, going through the PR FAQ process, if that idea is deemed to be a good one and we want to run with it, then a person is assigned a as a single-threaded owner, okay, to start working on that idea. And what that means is that person doesn't do anything else. This is the only thing they do. Okay, so we're not pinching them for half of their week. It's actually their sole job to do this. Okay, and they build a team. Okay, they build a team to deliver the product or service. And this team is autonomous. So you can think of it as a startup within the company. Okay. And these teams don't grow to more than about 10 or 12 people because that, in our experience and using the data we've collected, is the optimal size for these teams. And so what this allows this team to do is work in complete autonomy and deliver and create that service. Okay? And so effectively what we're doing is we're enabling, kind of the ability to kind of foster that kind of entrepreneurship within the organization. We foster ownership because they own what they're creating, and we're giving them autonomy to create it. Now, the other aspect of this, okay, is that this team, okay, understand that when they launch the product or service, that's the beginning, okay? Because once they've launched, okay, they've now got support to think about. They now have a roadmap. So how do they speak to customers, understand how customers are using it, what they want to see, how the product might evolve? Okay, that is managed by that two-pizza team. Okay, it's not thrown over the wall to a support team, so that this team can disband. This team runs that going forward. And so when you have that makeup of that team, when you're creating the product and service, it means that you care more about the quality of the product you're creating, because now if I've created something that's not reliable or robust enough, then I might get that pager at 2 o'clock in the morning that I don't want. And so we have many of these two-pizza teams within the organization. So I've talked about the 4 pillars of innovation, of how we organize for innovation with Amazon, okay? We've talked about the mechanisms, the tools, the culture, and how we organize ourselves. And when you do that, when you get those all in alignment, what that allows you to do is it allows you to push innovation out to the edges. So what that means is you don't have a single team or group that is responsible for innovation. It's everyone's job, okay? Everyone is empowered and enabled to contribute to innovation. And I think from the beginning of the talk, and how we're a customer-centric organization, what that allows us to do then is to take that mission, okay, and look for any areas, okay, that our customers want us to invent on their behalf, and allows us to empower all our people, not just one small group, to do that. So I'll leave you with this last thought, that we've had these 3 key ideas over the last 20 years. Put the customer first, very important. Invent and then be patient. So that's how we do innovation, and that's our innovation culture at Amazon. So that's the end of my deck. So thank you very much for your time. If you want to connect with me and talk to me more about this outside, I'm happy to talk to you. Thank you.